السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه المصطفى ورضوان الله عليه. So, welcome everybody. We begin in the name of God, the merciful, the especially merciful, and we praise Him, the Lord of the worlds. We welcome you to the Faith and Football, Mercy, Forgiveness, Patience, and Prayer in Sports. This event is sponsored by the Center of Muslim Experience in the United States, and it is co-sponsored by the School of Historical, Philosophical, and Religious Studies and the Center for the Study of Religion and Conflict. So this event was brought together because of the quite obvious increased visibility of religiosity, of piety, of religious identity, and inspired religious activism amongst a lot of athletes across various sports, be it from the protests for social justice found in football players or basketball players, or if it's found in the prostration of Muslim prayers or the praying of Christian prayers on the football pitch, the soccer field, or even in a mixed martial arts ring or a cage. We see that religion is having a resurgence when it comes to athletes and people who are involved in the athletic arena. So it makes perfect sense that on this weekend, the weekend of the Super Bowl here in Phoenix, Arizona, at ASU, we have an event with esteemed guests, with esteemed hosts, and with an esteemed audience here to talk about the place of religion and faith and practice in our athletic arenas. But today, this weekend, specifically dedicated to football. We were just hearing that some of the ex-NFL players really, they're not rooting for anybody, and they enjoy the game at the comfort of their own couch within arm's reach of their microwave, which is excellent because that's exactly how I'm going to be enjoying it. I typically don't avoid the chaos and the screaming. But without further ado, I wanted to introduce myself, your host today, Imam Omar Tawil. I work just across the street at the Islamic Community Center of Tempe, and I also work as a chaplain for Muslim students here at ASU, many of whom were local and many of whom are international students as well. So with that, an Imam will be hosting you. Don't worry. No preaching, but it's okay. I also wanted to have our other hosts represented by Dr. Ahmed Rawaisha to give us a few words from the Center for Muslim Experience in the U.S. Please come forward.
Alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Imam Omar. May peace be upon you all. And I would like to welcome you all on behalf of the Center for Muslim Experience in the U.S. We're having a wonderful event today because of your presence and because of our panelists. So thank you all for joining us today. Let me first introduce what the Center of Muslim Experience in the U.S. is. It's mainly founded in order to be telling the stories of the Muslims by ourselves. Muslims should be telling their stories and not leave the stories to be told in the voices of somebody else. Why? Because, as you all know, if you are not at the table, you are on the table. So that is why we want to make sure that we are telling our stories. That is the Muslim experience. We would like to make sure that the stories, even though they do appear, they show up every now and then in the media, but unfortunately in research and people in academia who studied the concepts of research and how research is done, unfortunately this concept is not told by Muslims. The concept of like what the Muslims have been doing in the U.S., what is their culture, what are their narratives, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, this is not done by Muslims for so long, and that is basically the main concept, the main idea behind initiating this Center for Muslim Experience in the U.S. Chad and Yasmin, Professors Chad and Yasmin were not able to make it today. They're out of the country because of some research project. They are on the other side of the globe, so probably it's now, I don't know if they can hear me or not, but probably right now it's like in the morning their time. So that's why they are not able to make it. Professor Jad and Yasmin are the founders of the Center for Muslim Experience in the U.S., and they are one of the core faculty. They are basically the co-directors of the Center for Muslim Experience. And we have a number of faculty. We have, mashallah, around like 10 faculty, including Professor Yasmin and Professor Chad, including myself, Professor Hassan, Han, and I don't know, I really want to forget the name, Saeed, Fabina, and so on. So we have a bunch of professors, alhamdulillah, what is our goal and how can you participate? Well, you can participate by sending the word out. If there are students here at Arizona State University who would like to do some research, whether they're undergraduate or postgraduate, they want to do some research and collecting some data, finding out what the Muslims are, telling their stories, documenting those stories. Unfortunately, documenting is not done very well for the Muslim community. That is why we would like to make sure to document this. You could participate. You could let us know if you have people who are thinking about, if you have like relatives that are thinking about joining joining academia and joining the school of a school of like religion and making sure that they narrate their voices. Arizona State University is a good candidate because we have this Center for Muslim Experience in the U.S. And without any further ado, special thanks to the Muslim Student Association co-sponsoring this event as well. So they're always here to help. And that is another thing. Please make sure that you guys, anybody who knows a Muslim student who is at ASU and is not a part of MSA, and the MSA have a huge amount of events that they can benefit from and benefit to. Thank you very much and welcome to this event.
Thank you very much. Dr. Yasmin and Dr. Chad are always traveling. Every time I see them a few times a year, I'm like, oh, so I'll see you next week. They're like, actually, we're going to be halfway around the world for the next 6 months. And then I'm like, I'll see you in 6 months. I see them for 1 week. Actually, I'm going to be somewhere else studying some research project. MashaAllah, may God reward them and may their academic careers only excel forward from here on out. We also wanted to welcome Caroline Forbes, and the Assistant Director for the Center of the Study of Religion and Conflict, to share a few words as our co-sponsor.
Hi, it's really great to be here today. We were really honored to be asked to co-sponsor this event and to help share news about it with faculty and staff and students that our networks reach. I think this is really important. Center for the Study of Muslim Experience in the U.S. is our sister center. We have worked with Chad and Yasmin for many, many years. Yasmin actually holds the Hart Nikachos Chair in Peace Studies at the Center for the Study of Religion and Conflict. And that's kind of where I wanted to say just a few words. This issue of kind of religion and sports and what does it all mean, and why do we even talk about religion and sports in relation to each other? And I was thinking about this as I was driving over here. There's kind of three kind of reasons we think about. One way is sports themselves can be sort of like a religion for some people. They can produce that same sense of fervor, that same sense of dedication. They can sort of organize their lives around it. It gives meaning and purpose to people. And there's a lot of scholarship actually that studies religion and sports, the relationship of religion and sports that way. And Terry Shoemaker, who's going to be the moderator for our panel today, has actually edited quite a few. He's edited a book on this subject and has written several articles about this. And I'm sure it's a little deeper and richer than what I've displayed. But that's actually an interesting way to think about the relationship of religion and sports. What can sports teach us about religious life and religious meaning, and what does studying religion teach us about sports? The other thing that I was thinking about sports and religion today, but it was really more thinking about this question of peace, and then later we'll talk a little bit about justice. But one of the things sports really teaches us, right, is how to actually be in a conflict that has rules around it. And then when that conflict is over, we shake hands and we can go on in our life. So it's a really interesting approach to, it can teach us a lot about how to be a human being in the world, how to relate to other people, and when we're having a contestation, how to resolve it in a peaceful way. I know a lot of people compare football, especially to war, but maybe we can think about football in another way, which is what I'm hoping to learn more about here today, because some people really view it as a martial activity. And yet it's a martial activity with a kind of sense of purpose. In all cultures that we can look at have some kind of sporting activity. Some of them are, really physical activities. And yet there seems to be something about human beings that seems to need to be able to do this and have some release. And that might be another way in which we can think about, even religious quests can be have these dimensions to them. And then the last thing I wanted to say to think about religion and sports was how sports is an interesting place to actually think about peace and justice. And some of the most powerful social movements over the last 50 years have actually been animated by sports. And one of the biggest ones was actually the boycott of South Africa during the apartheid era, and the role that the international sporting community played in helping to bring about change in South Africa. I mean, it was a powerful boycott. It was a powerful message. It was a powerful symbol. It doesn't always work, but it was, I think that played, the international sporting community played a really critical role in bringing about justice. And again, where do our ideas about justice frequently come from? We do have secular concepts of justice, but most of those are really rooted in religious visions. And that the global community could come together that way, I think, was another really powerful way to think about this relationship of religion and sports and mercy and forgiveness and some of the things we're going to be talking about today. So at any rate, we're really honored to be asked to co-sponsor this event and to be part of this ASU community and beyond in the Muslim Student Association. It's really great to be here with you too. So with that, I'll say thank you.
Thank you very much. I know you guys have a long weekend waiting for this Super Bowl to come through, and also for tonight. For those of you who are mixed martial arts fans, go Islam. Not the religion, the person. But you know what? As a faithful follower of Islam, sure, that one too. I want to introduce our panelists, beginning with our moderator, the esteemed Dr. Terry Shoemaker, who holds his Ph.D. in religious studies from Arizona State University and is currently an assistant teaching professor at ASU. In his research, he studies sports in the United States through the lens of religious studies, theories, and methods. His first book, The Prophetic Dimensions of Sport, published in 2018, examined athletic activism as contemporary prophetic activity. He is currently the editor of the International Journal of Sport and Religion and working on his second manuscript titled Religions and Sports: An Introduction. This is especially important for many Muslims because we know that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was actually an avid wrestler. And there's a very famous prophetic tradition where he actually encourages adults to teach their children horseback riding, swimming, and archery. And that can be translated very easily into a modern context of get up off your couch. We also have one of our esteemed athletes that are here sitting with us, Matt Jesse Ware. In Loyola High School, he was noted as the CIF Player of the Year in California. He was also a First Team USA Today and Parade All-American, esteemed title winner. He played at the UCLA, where he started every game as a freshman and was a freshman All-American with 5 interceptions. Pretty difficult. When you play backyard football, interceptions are hard enough. Seattle Mariners, Ware was drafted by the Seattle Mariners in his first beginning of his athletic career with the Major League of Baseball. He was drafted in 2001. He played for the Peoria Mariners during 2001 and 2002 seasons. He was then later picked up by the Philadelphia Eagles. He was drafted by them in the 2004 NFL Draft. He played in the Super Bowl, recording 5 tackles and a pass breakup. In 2005, he recorded a game-winning touchdown against the San Diego Chargers. And in 2010, he received the Ed Block from the Arizona Cardinals and NFL for overcoming diabetes while playing, when he recovered the ball after a blocked Chargers field goal and carried it to the end zone. He also played for the Arizona Cardinals in 2006, where again, he made it to the Super Bowl versus the Pittsburgh Steelers and was a key contributor in special teams and defense. And finally, he spent the end of his career with Toronto Argonauts? Is that how you pronounce that? What is an Argonaut? I'm not sure. He played for them. He spent 2 years there. First, he spent 2 years away from football as a personal trainer and a firefighter. Dang, where were you? Where were you a firefighter at? MashaAllah. So then he went to the CFL playing for the Toronto Argonauts. That's an esteemed career. Man, you have a lot of stories to tell, don't you? We're here to listen. We're here to listen. And last but not least, we have my dear brother, Hamza Abdullah, who enjoyed a 7-year NFL career while playing for the Arizona Cardinals and the Denver Broncos. He's been featured in the New York Times, Washington Post, and ESPN for observing, famously, him and his brother, the month of Ramadan while playing in the NFL. In the month of Ramadan, Muslims don't eat, don't drink during all the hours of sunrise. The sun is up, no Gatorade, no ice cold water, none of that stuff. No amazing nachos after the game either, unless it's sunset. Then they can get those delicious nachos that they're selling out there. He has also appeared on CNN and NBC. In 2011, he was invited to the White House for an iftar dinner hosted by President Barack Obama, and he played in the NFL game the following day. Again, a really hard task. You know, you got a lot of Muslims who are just trying to keep their muscle mass in Ramadan, but this guy was playing in the NFL. Hamza graduated from the Washington State University as a captain on the football team that became the winningest class in school history. Since transitioning out of the league, Hamza embarked on a professional public speaking career, sharing his story and his practical tools at various events, including the reviving of the Islamic Spirit Conference hosted in Toronto, Canada. He also shared his message at various colleges, including University of North Carolina, Yale, Columbia, Northwestern, Syracuse, and Purdue, and Michigan State. But something that isn't mentioned in his bio is that he oftentimes finds himself in mosques trying to inspire young Muslim youth to aspire to become athletes who keep their integrity of their faith and their character that is inspired by their Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Without further ado, I want to welcome the floor to Dr. Terry to be our moderator for this evening and to kick off this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Imam Omar, and the Center for Muslim Experience in the United States, and two guests today, Matt and Hamza, and others involved in planning and sponsoring this. I know you're not here to hear me, and so but I was asked to just say a couple of words, and so I promise you I'm going to be very, very quick, and I'm going to try to be really interesting. All right? So I'm going to try. All right? So we come together to discuss faith and football, or we come together to discuss faith in football, right? It's one of the ways I try to think about it. These religious expressions on a football field that we have. On the eve of the Super Bowl, the most watched sporting event in the United States. For American football fans, seeing a player pray or acknowledge a deity for their skills or the win is fairly common. It actually may be the norm, kind of an expectation after the game that someone would thank God for the victory and their abilities. But in the earliest days of football, faith was actually almost always seen as opposed to playing football. This is really, really interesting history. In the earliest days of the creation of the sport of football, and I'm not talking soccer here, right? I'm talking American football. Religious people, primarily Christians, were appalled by the violent nature of the game of football. The first years, primarily played in what we now call Ivy League colleges, witnessed what would be called, we'd literally just call two teams fighting, trying to push a ball down a field. It mimicked war. It was a battle. It kind of echoed the U.S. expansion westward. You won when you literally set up shop in the other team's territory and said, "This is mine now." The game was referred to as mob ball or mob football. And for good reason. In 1904, there were 18 players who died playing football. At least 159 injuries. 1905, it increased to 19 deaths. Southerners, who are, if you know Southerners, Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, right, who are just these avid football fans, a lot of Southerners Christian Southerners despised football. 1892, one pastor lamented that football was a foolish and useless sport and was more properly called a fight. 1897, the Alabama Christian Advocate condemned football for its propensity to, quote, convert a crowd of students inflamed with liquor and excited by loyalty to their institution into a howling mob of toughs, gamblers, and drunkards, end quote. And it wasn't that these Christians were opposed to exercise. One reverend argued, you don't have to play football. All you need to do is go cut your mother's yard or drive your father's plow. Football was associated with gambling, swearing, and other types of debauchery early on. However, not everyone agreed with this. Teddy Roosevelt in 1903 said, "I believe in rough games and in rough, manly sports. I do not feel any particular sympathy for the person who gets battered about a good deal so long as it's not fatal." That was Teddy Roosevelt in 1903. In 1905, Teddy Roosevelt's son was playing in one of those Ivy League football teams, and he had a little different paternal twist on it. He gathered together all of the presidents of the colleges and says, we've got to fix this game. This later becomes the NCAA. They start regulating the game. They include a forward pass, which is awesome because we all like to see those one-headed catches now. They created a neutral zone and improved protection. At the same time, people are starting to think differently about football and what football can do. The U.S. is industrializing. People aren't on the farm anymore, and so they need an outlet to express their masculinity, for energy, et cetera, et cetera. And by 1972, according to Gallup, football is the most popular sport in the United States. And faith is seemingly everywhere in football. Many know about Tim Tebow, but before there was Tebowing, defensive lineman Reggie White was known as the Minister of Defense because he was a powerful defensive tackle, but also an ordained minister. And Steve Young, a devout member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, super famous quarterback. And now there's a whole host of players, Jewish, Muslim, and Christian primarily, who are very outspoken about their faith. So today when players like Damar Hamlin suffer injuries on the field, it is common to see numerous players gather around, take a knee, and say a prayer for their fallen teammate or opponent. Now, this isn't perfect, right? There's some episodes, Abdullah, intercepted a pass in 2014, and when he celebrated in a Muslim form of prayer, they threw a flag on him because it was foreign and they didn't quite understand. However, the NFL the next day apologized, said it shouldn't have happened. Maybe we can talk about that. We don't have to because I'm sure you've talked about it a lot. And so as faith in football has changed, we are fortunate today to have two retired football players come and speak with us about what it's like to actually give us insider scoop of what's going on. And so to start with, I would like just each of you very quickly to introduce yourself as it relates to football and your faith journey. Whoever wants to go first.
Excuse me. I'm Matt Ware. I started my faith journey long before I started playing football. My parents, grandmother, just family in general, we always went to church. From the time I can remember, sitting in those long sermons, for three hours, stomach grumbling. And then I really developed a foundation in my religion, and then went to sports. And when I started playing sports, we started going to church a little less often because we, were traveling, had a lot of stuff going on in our family, and it kind of led me into college, where I kind of went on my own little path, and I saw myself kind of diverting a little bit, and even in my first couple of years in the league, and I really found myself struggling and going into like dark places. But when I was at my darkest, I had a foundation that was set from when I was younger, that I had to lean on, and I just praying to God that this is your will be done. I don't know where I'm going right now. I just got cut by the team that I got drafted by, and I don't know what's coming next. And that was a very unsettling feeling, but having that foundation allowed me to get back to where I started. And then I came to Arizona in 2007 and got baptized again with Antoine Bolden and a bunch of other guys, and that's pretty much led me to where I'm at right now.
And my name is Hamza Abdullah. I'm Muslim. My faith journey started, I would say, when I came out the womb. I was a twin, and my mother I had a twin sister, and my twin sister, she had to stay at the hospital. And so it was just me and my mom at home. And during that time, my mom, and of course, I don't remember, but my mom, said that she was just deep in prayer, asking God, of course, for to help my sister, but also for this other young infant that is in her hands, that, God protect him and lead him and guide him. But grew up in the family. My mom had 12 children. We went to the mosque frequently. Our stepfather Brother Yusuf, who has since passed away, may God have mercy on him, really instilled in us making our prayer and hustling. Like, that's what it was, because he was a carpenter. He did whatever it took to pay the bills. And so his main two things were, you're going to hustle, you're always going to be a hard worker, and then you're going to be faithful, you're going to be praying, and you're going to ensure that you're always praying and being a good representation of that prayer, a good representation of what it means to be a Muslim. Just like Matt, the foundation is laid, but when you go out on your own, you go to college, I went my own way, and I had to figure it out for myself. But it's kind of like being in a house. You're in a house and it's all dark. The foundation is there, the home is there, but how do I turn that light on? And that's where, for me, I had to really, hone in on, okay, well, this faith walk is mine, but my foundation is there, the house is there. But now how can I turn that light on? How can I see? How can I be guided? And that's really where I'm at now, is trying to continue to not only turn that light on, but keep that light on. And then as that light is on, being able to show our family and our children, this is the way that we walk through life with faith.
Wonderful. And to get to your NFL experience, one of the slides up here, I think, is a numerical demographics of, it's a handful of Muslim players currently in the NFL, more Christian players who identify as Christian in the NFL. Specific to you, Hamza, does being a Muslim in the NFL set you apart, and then for both of you, just being religious and outspoken religious in the NFL, does that set you apart from other players?
Well, I would say, number one, the locker room in the NFL is a very sacred, and it's a very sacred sanctuary. It's built on respect, because we know that my brother here paid the same price that I paid to sit in the seat. And everything that he does at home is what allows him to sit in that seat. So there's a respect level. There are some people who can say are religious, some people who are somewhat religious, and some people maybe not so religious. But they're not being judged in that locker room, because we understand the price of admission that they paid for that seat. It's respect. Now, for someone, another thing about the NFL is, when someone comes through that door, again, it's built on respect. I'm not disrespecting this man. I'm not asking him or saying what he's doing is wrong, or we don't have that, because of that respect. And so that's just my personal opinion, that it's built on respect. And so the person who reads their Bible every day, I had a teammate of ours, Jason Wright, when he got on the bus, he would read his Bible. No one gave him flack for that. That was what he needed to prepare and to do his job. They respected it. I respected it. I started bringing my Quran, and I started reading on the bus too. Again, it's a respect level. So that's what I would say. What would you say?
Yeah, I don't see a division per se. Like Hamza was saying, there's a mutual respect everybody has. I know for myself, I went to a Catholic high school, right? I'm Christian. In the bus on the way to the game, we would say the rosary 7 times. I personally didn't partake in that. I sat quietly and respected what everybody else was doing, No one ever said anything to me about it. It's just, what we had to do, how they prepared, and I respected them. They respected me. The same thing I could say in the locker room, pre-game prayer, where everybody, goes in the shower, holds hands. There's some people that stay in their lockers, and they may believe the same thing I believe, you know what I'm saying? They just don't want to partake in that ceremony right there. So they, sit in their locker, they do their own prayer. Brother Hamza did the same thing, you know what I mean? And you just prepare yourself, and there's no real feelings about it towards anybody,
You mentioned one particular, Matt, episode in the NFL when you got cut, and then how you leaned on your faith more during that time of your life. For either one of you, is there another experience specifically playing football, whether it's college, high school, whatever, where you really leaned upon your faith, or your faith came into play for whatever reason?
For me, I would say after my freshman year in college, I was actually down here, I think it was like November 11th, 2001. I tore my ACL. I was pushed in the back and I tore my ACL, and I didn't know if that was the end of my career. And it was the first time that I couldn't walk off the field on my own, so they had to carry me off. My parents were in the stands, my brother was in the stands, and I felt like I let them down. And at that moment, I wasn't a football player anymore. So when I went home and I'm sitting there in college as a college football player that doesn't play football, okay, well now, Hamza, who are you? And that was the first instance of, I better understand and I better find out who I am without the game of football. And I would say that was probably a building block that helped me later on in life when eventually I retired and I transitioned, and I needed to ask that same question. Hamza, who are you without the game of football? So I'd say that's definitely a point and a place where many players reach out to their faith partner, or reach out to someone and reach out to where they feel like God can be found and God can see them, because that, to me, that's the darkest place that a football player can be, is when they're not playing football.
Yeah, kind of trying to jog my memory on this one, but I would also say that time being cut and being out of football and being in a very dark place, newly divorced, trying to figure out what in the world is going on, you know what I mean? And sometimes doing things out of character, you know what I mean? And just trying to come back and just saying, like, I need help, you know what I mean? And to be able to say, I'm not strong enough to handle this on my own, like to take this cross. I can't bear a cross on my own shoulders, you know what I'm saying? So like I would pray continuously, like, Lord, please help me, give me strength and give me guidance, you know what I mean? And at my darkest moment, the light turned back on. Like I had to be broken, and that's kind of, I guess that would be my second one also.
Yeah. Growing up, so I didn't know you drafted baseball first, so two sports. Growing up, was there any particular athletes that were either religious or not religious that you looked up to as somebody that you really kind of sought to emulate, as far as like someone that the way they handle themselves on the field, or their faith on the field, on the court, baseball, diamond, whatever? Who did you look up to growing up?
I wouldn't say that I looked up to anybody spiritually as a youth, but the first time I stepped into a locker room, I was able to share a locker with probably the man with the most faith-driven person that I've been around, and that was Brian Dawkins. And I don't say this often, but I almost didn't feel worthy. Like I almost didn't want to go to Bible study. I didn't want to do these things. I'm like sitting here watching this guy prior to games, listening to gospel music, sobbing, crying, putting oil on his knees, blessing oil, like crossing his body. And like, here I am, I just went out, 2 nights in a row, you know what I mean? Like I just wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing per se. And seeing the way he practiced and the way he played, and it all was derived from his faith, because he was eating Fruit Loops in the morning. You know what I mean? It wasn't like he had some special diet, but like his belief was so strong that he could do anything. Bro, how big is Brian Dawkins? He's not that big. And he was crushing people who were 6'5", 280 pounds daily by play. You know what I mean? And it was just incredible to see. And then to see his, he never cursed, but like the way he got his message across will make you run through a wall for him. You know what I mean? And I was like, how is he doing this? And I still ask myself that question now, but that was the guy. That was the guy. And then the second guy that I met was this guy right here, And my brother Hamza, I met him. We had gone out. Then we ended up being on the same team together, being locker mates. And to see him daily want for others what he wants for himself, to continually put himself or put others ahead of himself. You know what I mean? I've only really looked up to two men in my life: my dad and this guy, Hamza, because he's consistent, and yes, we're all flawed, but like he's consistent in his message. He's consistent in the way that he carries himself, and it's something that I myself would like to be like.
I would say for me, the person I looked up to as a kid was Hakeem Olajuwon. Going through the 1994 and 1995 NBA Finals, it was during the month of Ramadan, so he was fasting while playing in the NBA Finals. And not just playing, dominating in the NBA Finals. So we're looking at this massive man with beautiful footwork, running both sides of the court. And then when he gets off the court, he's just like head down, just drenched, towel on his head, but then when he gets back on the court, the switch flips and he's back on. And then in the interviews, he's thanking God, he's praising God, and they're asking him, man, how can you do all this? You have no nourishment. And he said, my faith is my nourishment. I'm being nourished by God. And that really, that planted a seed in me. I'm here in Pomona, California. He's in, he's in Houston, Texas. But that made a huge impact on me and my brother, all of my brothers, but mainly me and my brother Hussein Abdullah, who ended up playing in the NFL. And my mother, may God protect and preserve her. She's like, if he can do it, you guys can do it. And so all of us, starting at the age of 7, by that time I was already almost a teenager, but my mother started us fasting at 7 years old. And when sports came, sports just came. She didn't say you can choose either to fast or you're going to fast and you go to play sports because you're Muslim. This is what you do. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And so she taught us that as a 7-year-old, just going all the way up, and to where in college, I was fasting while playing football. It was no big deal to me and Hussein. We just did it. When we got to the NFL, it was no big deal. This is what we've always done. But then someone caught wind of it and said, hey, these guys are not eating or drinking while they're playing football. Then media relations guy comes over, he says, hey, is this true? I'm like, yeah. All of a sudden, ESPN, New York Times, all these people come in and they're fascinated. But for us, it was just a part of our walk, it's a part of our daily life. But yeah.
It's interesting that you bring up Hakeem Olajuwon. I'm not sure. So I know exactly what you're referencing. So as a high school basketball player in the 90s, watching the finals, there was so much airtime given to Hakeem the Dream for fasting, right? I think they even at one point, he played one game and at halftime the sun had set. So the cameras followed him into the locker room and watched him eat like little crackers or something, right? And I remember being a high school basketball player in Kentucky and literally being introduced to Ramadan and Islam and fasting at that moment. And so I don't know that Olajuwon knows what he did for it, like just knowledge in Islam in the United States. So thanks for bringing him back into my mind. Yeah.
So that first training camp that I did with Hamza when you were doing Ramadan, I remember Hamza losing 15 pounds of water. We're at 7,000 feet elevation and it's 85 degrees. That's hot up there. Losing 15 pounds of fluid and then not being able to put that back in your body and having another practice. And then doing that day after day after day and then having to stay up late to be able to nourish yourself and then wake up in the morning, to be able to do prayer. And it's like, I was struggling. I was getting plenty of sleep, You know what I mean? And I was getting my fluids and fluid, you know what I mean? And I was like, how is he hanging on right now? You know? But like, his faith was so strong, you know, and his drive was so strong. And that was like by far the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Let's have that out there.
Speaking, not that fasting is an interference with you playing sports, right? It does disrupt things. Can either one of you think of any other way that maybe your faith has? You mentioned you didn't go to church as much because you were football and baseball, whatever. Any other ways that potentially your faith and sports kind of competed for your time or devotion or attention?
Yeah, I would say when I first got into the league, I was so focused on my playbook. I was so focused on Sunday. I was so focused on the new friends and interactions, you know, and just trying to keep my job. I would pray, but it kind of just went to the back burner. You know what I mean? It was like kind of on a as needed basis, which that is not that's not how the relationship works. You know what I mean? You don't go to your parents only time when you need something. You know what I'm saying? It's an open relationship. It's talking. You know, and I just drifted, and then I felt unworthy. Until I was cut, and I asked to please come back into my life. You know what I'm saying? And to help me out. I had no strength left. So I would say, yeah, that beginning part of my sports journey, I that's why I stepped away primarily. Yeah.
But I would say that's got to be difficult though, like to be a Christian. I always went to church every Sunday morning. But then when I get to the NFL, I literally can't. Like, I always thought about that as a Muslim. I'm like, my brothers, like, they cannot go to church. We're practicing on Christmas Day. I'm like, what comes first? I used to always think about that. Like, for me, Friday afternoons, like, we would usually have a walkthrough practice on Friday, or a light practice on Fridays. And we're usually done by about 12, and then sometimes they have meetings after. But Friday, 11:30, I'm out the door because I got to make prayer. And I couldn't imagine not being able to have that. And sometimes, you're flying from, across the coast or something like that, and you have to leave one Friday. That's understandable. But I can come back Friday next week. So to not be able to go to church for 17 weeks, like, of course you're going to feel lost or distant. Like, I always thought about that. I just, that's the plug. That's the outlet. That's where I get my connection. So not being able to talk to your pastor or your preacher for 17 weeks. And I know they, at the hotels, Sunday mornings, they bring like a pastor sometimes. But to me, that's not the same. Like, the church, the mosque, the temple, that's a communal event. Like, I get to see my brothers. I get to say, what's up? I get that feeling of life, like when I see someone and I'm happy to see them, like they're happy to see me, but I'm happy to see them. We've been seeing each other, like, for the last few months, like all we see is our teammates. So to be able to see someone else from your faith and be able to say, Assalamu alaikum, how you doing, brother? Like, that's different. Like, I couldn't imagine not being able to have that. So that's what I would say for Matt. But then where faith and football collided was during those training camps, during football, because they would ask, well, is he choosing faith over football? They would ask that question. Because in the NFL is number one. It has to be. Once something interferes with the NFL's number one status, they go crazy. You just read, since 1972, the NFL has been the number one sport. That's why soccer's not big here. That's why baseball's not big here. The NFL doesn't want it to be big. It's not by coincidence. More kids play soccer than any other sport. Why is it not that big? because the NFL is number one and it has to be number one. And so when they looked at me, they thought, hey, he's choosing something over the NFL. And it's like, no, I'm just Muslim. Just like with my Christian brother, he's just Christian. Like, this is what allows us to sit in this seat. Because for them, it's bang or bust. Like, you have to be all in or all out. And for no, this is a package deal. I gotta have my faith. He has to have his faith. We have to have our family. Like, we're not choosing. But if you make us choose, you know which one we're going to choose.
That was always one of the first questions they asked. I remember being at the combine and they say, give me the top 3 things in your life. I'm sure they'll let family go by, but if football isn't number 2, you probably just drop down that board, that list. If football comes 3rd or 4th or something like that, yeah, it's not for you. To them.
A few years. It was a few years ago, somebody went viral at the combine saying, man, football is not everything. He wasn't drafted in the first round. This is serious stuff. Like, you can feel that, you just can't say it. This is the NFL, and I understand it completely. Like, from the NFL's point of view, the NFL, the reason why they don't mind anyone praying because it's a bottom line business. As long as we're number one, you can do whatever you want. We're making money. You do whatever you want. Hey, man, we should get this for the players because they're going to ask, does it make us money? Like, if they had enough NFL players, like let's say for the Cardinals, there were 10 Muslim NFL players, and they requested, hey, can we have a room just dedicated for the Cardinals to pray? They'll ask, does it make us money? If that makes us money, we'll do it. It's business. I don't take that personal. I just think of it as a business decision. And so when we're referencing the NFL, we have to understand we're not negotiating with people. You're negotiating with a business.
And so remind me, did you take a season off to do the Hajj?
So I thought I was taking a season off, but that was the end of my career.
And so was it because you put your faith over football? Do you think that's what, but you weren't re-signed? I mean,
I'll say what was supposed to happen happened. My brother Hussein, we both took the 2012 season, and so I'll just back up a little bit because you introduced that, so I'll let those know who didn't know. At the end of the 2011 season, I had just finished up my 7th year, my 3rd year here with the Arizona Cardinals, and I was doing pretty well on special teams, played every game, and I was looking to get a contract extension, which is, we're always looking for that contract extension. But in the offseason, my brother, he was playing for the Minnesota Vikings. He had just finished his 4th year, but he got injured. He got a concussion, so he spent the back half of the year, 2011 season, on injured reserve. All he was doing was reading, researching, getting closer to God. And after the season, he said, Hamza, we need to go to Mecca. We had never been there before. We hadn't traveled. We hadn't went to Hajj or Umrah, which is the lesser Hajj, the lesser pilgrimage. And I said, man, when do you want to go? He said, March. And it's like, well, March is free agency. And again, I'm looking to get my payday that I've been working for. He's like, man, come on, like we got to do this. Again, this is our faith. And so I said, okay, let's do it. So we went to Mecca, and I didn't get the calls that I probably would have gotten. We came back, I'm like, okay. I'm not going to say it's because I was out of the country, but I'm here now. Okay, what are the teams saying? Oh, Hamza, the Cardinals want to bring you back. This team is talking to you, X, Y, Z. So I'm like, okay, getting some traction. So I wasn't getting signed, but there were meetings. Okay, Hamza, you're one of the guys that's going to get signed. Talking to Hussein said, hey, man, we should go for Hajj. And I'm like, well, Hajj is in October. there's no way, there's no team in the NFL that's going to sign you and let you go on a 2-week vacation during the season. It's not going to happen. So I'm like, you know what that means? Like, we would have to sit out the season. Prayed about it. We ended up saying, okay. And we went to Hajj 2012. That was a life-changing moment for me. Like, I understood what Islam was about. Like, all these things and dreams that we had. And the Kaaba, which is the holy mosque in Mecca, believed to be the first house of worship built in the world. A building that you could feel the energy. It feels alive when you go there. It literally feels like it is living. To see millions of people doing the exact same thing for one reason, to worship God, most powerful thing I've ever seen. And so that was a dream for 2 kids in Pomona, California. Like, that was a wish. And now here we are at the Kaaba. And then we also got to bring our parents with us. So to be able to take our parents with us to Mecca was a powerful experience. But we come back from Hajj, the end of October, we start training. Hey man, maybe we can get signed onto a team at the end of the season, like the playoffs. Didn't happen, it's okay. We'll prepare for 2013 season. Hussein gets a call from Kansas City. He works out, he gets a job. And I'm like, man, I'm next. February, March, April, May, man, I'm next. June, July, August, September, man, I'm next. And I realized that call wasn't coming. And so, was me going to Hajj the reason why my football career ended? I don't know, because I wasn't in that room. But I will say it definitely led me on a path to transition a lot sooner than I wanted to or thought I would. But I also knew that God was preparing me for something. And I knew it was going to be the hardest thing I ever did in my life. And that's what it was. It was a hard grind to get from where I was to being sitting with my guy right here, like now.
I know you got another question. To add on top of that, to add on to the faith aspect of that, Hamza came back from Hajj, right? He was in the best shape of his life, training from October until that next signing period. 6'3", 228 pounds, 3% body fat, running faster than he ever did, quicker than he ever was, more focused, more determined. And then the call never comes. So just imagine you're preparing for the NFL draft, right? And everything is based on numbers, right? And you're putting these numbers up that you've never done before, and they say no. So where does that take you mentally, right? And if you don't have faith as your base, that is a lonely, dark, scary place, because you're doing everything you're supposed to do. So now where do you go, right? So I just had to add that out real quick.
So thanks for sharing that part of your story with us. So being a person of faith and just being a professional athlete, the expectations of being a professional athlete, the many platforms, it just trying to balance that for me that has never experienced it seems wild to even imagine. Are there any misconceptions about you as a person of faith, you as a football player, that if you had a chance to, like everyone thinks X, Y, Z or whatever, that you'd want to kind of clarify, that you can think of?
The biggest misconception is that we have it figured out, that we're perfect. We're the furthest thing from perfect. Say, man, how can you be a guy who prays, or how can you be a guy who goes to Mecca? Because that's what I needed. That's what I needed. That's the hole that I was in. That was the That's what I needed, that light. Like, I needed to grab onto a rope, the rope of God, because there was nothing else, no one else out there. There was no one else. You know, someone asked, one of my buddies, Nate Jackson, who played tight end for the Denver Broncos, he said, "What do you call a football player that doesn't play football?" You don't. You don't. The NFL will not call you. You don't. No one is thinking about a guy who's hurt. Like, we haven't even really talked about Kyler Murray. He tore his ACL. Is anyone checking up on him to see how he's doing? See where his mental space is? Oh, but he has a whole bunch of money, so he should be okay. No. Or that guy is a Christian, he should be okay. Like when Tim Tebow, when he got released, you know, they're talking about on the, oh man, he, you know, and again, or I'll say this. Now, I won't say that Tim Tebow was the best at throwing the football. But when he tucked that ball, he was an animal, probably one of the best to do it. And as a leader of men, as a guy you want right next to you, yeah, his quarterback mechanics, I'm not a quarterback. But the way that he galvanized the team, but when he was released, did anyone call him and check on him, say, "Hey, Tim, how you doing?" I don't know. But I think that's the biggest misconception of someone who has a faith or, you know, is saying, "Hey, you know, I'm Christian or I'm Jewish or I'm Muslim," is thinking they have it figured out or thinking that they're perfect. No, they're not.
Yeah, to add along on that, I would say the thought that you could be Christian, right? Jesus was, from what was described, just a great humanitarian, you know, just for people, caring about people, right? XYZ. And then you have Hamza, myself, you know, 1,300 other guys, how many guys are in the league who are big, strong, violent, tempers, you know what I'm saying? That's what allows us to do what we do, right? But at the same time, we give praise to the Almighty, you know what I mean? And so, like, some people are conflicted with that, you know? It's the same as, let's say you go to Vegas and there's somebody on the corner, you know, preaching fire and brimstone, you know what I mean? And it's like, they believe also, you know what I'm saying? They're giving it off a different way. There's so many different avenues, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah. Has just follow up on that. Has anybody within your faith tradition ever asked you, you know, how can you be Christian and this follower of Jesus and then you're hitting people so hard on Sunday? Or how can you be a Muslim, a religion of peace, and do what you do? I mean, has that ever, one, has anybody ever had the courage to ask you? And then two, you know, has that conversation ever even come up at all?
I not the courage to ask, but then when they do find out, like, oh man, you're such a nice guy off the field, you know what I mean? Like, and then you turn on this switch, you know what I mean? So yes, I you know, all the way from high school on up, that has been brought up for me.
Brian Dawkins was just on the Pivot podcast with Ryan Clark, Fred Taylor, and Channing Crowder, and they asked him about that. Like, how are you this man of God, but you are literally the most violent individual on that field? And he said he took it from the great Reggie White, who has passed away. We got immersed in him. Reggie White used to play that strong, that fast, and then if someone got hurt, he prayed for them. And so Brian Dawkins, B-Dawk, was like, that's what I'm going to do. Like, when I hurt someone, because he was going to hurt someone, I'm just going to pray for him.
Yeah. So I have 4 or 5 more questions, but we're at 5 o'clock. And so I think we were going to open it up for questions from the audience. I hope we are. Do we have a microphone for that? Can someone help me? I'm joking. With this, we can use one of these microphones if we want. We want to open it up. If no one has questions, I have a few more that I can ask both Hamza and Matt, but we'd really like to hear what kind of questions you all have.
So, yeah, thanks a lot for the discussion. I think actually all of my questions were answered already, but I have a question for both Matt and Hamza, which is probably since you are already here and since you're already talking about your faith comfortably, for a lack of better word, then you already have this comfort from like not too soon. You've been talking about you're comfortable with that, but not everybody is like that. So my question is, what is the culture and what is the culture in towards asking religious question and getting to know about you from your teammates? Was it comfortable for them? Did you usually see that people want to ask but are afraid to probably ask a question that is sensitive to you, but it turns out, although it is not, just because they are sensitive to it? Or was the culture in the team was pretty much that anybody can ask any question? And I understand that there has been, you have been asked these questions, but I think my question is, how often do you receive questions about your faith?
Are you asking as I was playing or now? As I was playing, there was a fraction of guys who believed the same thing as I did. Then there was a fraction of guys who did their own thing. I think, if I can speak for both of us, Hamza and myself we were locker room guys, is what they call it. We were kind of glue for the locker room. Humble guys, not boastful, loud, so I think people didn't have an issue coming and talking to us and asking us questions because we weren't trying to portray something that we weren't. We were just us all the time. And we just had fun all the time, And so, no, people didn't have a problem coming up and saying, hey, asking a question. Or even myself, I remember going to Kona Grill one night with Hamza. Maybe it was a Friday night. And then we drove home. I drove you back to your house. We sat in the car for 3 hours. And I asked questions to Hamza because you were my first Muslim brother, right? Like I didn't have knowledge of something I just didn't know about, right? And so I was asking you questions, you were giving me answers, you were asking me questions, and that dialogue I will never forget, never, because we went from 2001, right, which was a day in infamy, 9/11, right, and so many people came up with their own thoughts or misconceptions about the Muslim religion, right, based upon what happened. So I'm asking you questions and you're answering me. But if you only just take the media, right, and in whatever direction they're going with it, then your whole thought process is not really being challenged. You're just being given information that you really don't know. Those people aren't actually living it themselves, So to be able to sit down with you and to ask you the way of life, the thought process about things was like mind-opening to me, So I know I that was part of the question, but I also had to add that on there.
I kept Qur'ans in my locker. I kept probably like 3, and I had an open locker policy. You could ask me anything, any question. No question is a dumb question, and I've heard a lot of, but no question is dumb. You know, and the Imam, if I say anything, please correct me, but I believe there's a narration that says the cure to ignorance is asking questions. Someone told me that one time. So if we have a country that is a country built and based on saying, hey, the religious freedom, well, but this one religion here doesn't really have that freedom. And it's purely because people are not asking the right questions. Or maybe we're not asking the right people the right questions, whatever it is. So whatever platform that I may have, if it's a locker room with me and my buddy, me and my brother, me and my boy, me and my teammate, I'm going to do my best to answer the question the best way that I can. And if I can't answer that, then I'm going to go find that answer or find someone who has that answer. So it's no different than going to the water cooler at a company. You know, for a lot of us here, you know, you're students. You may be the only Muslim that someone has ever had in their class. You're at a company. You may be the only Muslim that someone has ran into. Hey, man, I noticed, you know, when they bring out the turkey sliders at lunch, you eat those. But when they bring the ham sliders, you stay away. Why do you do that? Well, it's because I'm Muslim. So being able to have that open door, open locker policy, I think that helped me. You know, I just asked that they asked me. We talked about it. And if you wanted a Quran, I just asked that you went and washed up. Hey, just wash up. Then you can have one. And whatever questions that come, I'll do my best to answer them. And then we can go on this journey with you. Because I'm learning too. We're both learning. We're all learning. And if, again, as a team, we know that like chemistry is everything. You know, these two teams that are playing in the Super Bowl, I bet their team chemistry is A+. A+, it has to be. I guarantee you their level of respect for one another, they will run through a wall for any and everyone. Regardless of their faith, regardless if they have no faith, they're still going to respect and protect that brother because they're in that room. And so that's what we had. We had that respect. We had that open door, open locker policy that you can ask us anything.
So I have a question. Assalamu alaikum and peace and blessings on you guys. Thank you for being here. So I have a very specific question. It's personal because faith is a very personal journey. And I have two daughters that are athletes and they enjoy doing track and field. And Ramadan is around the corner. And so if you fast, right, you do fast. But are there things that you do specifically to train yourself? Are there actual things that you eat? Are there things that you could share as advice as to keep your sustenance up for the day? And then my second part of the question is, are there things that you do specifically to stay consistent with your faith that is outside the tenets of the parameters of like religion, like not religiosity, but spiritual connection, faith? Like, what do you do to strengthen that every day? Are there like certain rituals that you all do that keep you consistent?
The first one, so I'm on Instagram, Pro Big Bros, and I started this page really to kind of just talk about my experiences growing up as a young athlete. And one of the recent posts I did was about athletes preparing for Ramadan. And this was 10 weeks out and starting like a 10-week process where you're gearing up for fasting and training at the same time we're playing in your games. But yeah, specific foods in the morning like dates, cucumbers, watermelon, pickle juice, Pedialyte. These are some things that I would do to hydrate myself in the morning. And then at nighttime, protein shakes, bananas, again, some of those same fruits and vegetables. But I always say, just as you said, faith is it's a personal walk. So is fasting. Fasting is very individual. And just because Hussein Abdullah or Hamza Abdullah fast, it doesn't mean that Muhammad Yassin Abdullah can fast, or Layla Abdullah can fast, or Maryam Abdullah can fast, or Akil Abdullah can fast. And so I always recommend that athletes and their parents talk and they communicate. And if the athlete says, hey, I would like to fast, well, as a parent, you can support them and say, okay, well, let's get coaches involved. And there's so many Muslim athletes now that compete at the highest level while fasting. So asking those and asking your doctor and things like that, I think, so that part of the question, I think it is individual. But if you are planning to fast, it's so important that you prepare. That's the biggest thing, is preparation. Have proper preparation. The second part, as far as what we do on a day-to-day basis to strengthen our faith, I think that's individual as well. And I'll just say something quickly, then pass it to Matt. My partner, Alexa, my spouse, she said, Hamza, why do you pray? She asked me, why do you pray? Like, I know why you pray, because it's a pillar of Islam, but why do you pray? She said, when you start praying, when you say Allahu Akbar, God is the greatest, why do you do that? She said, I feel it's because you're saying everything behind you, like God's greater than that. And then when you go into the prayer, you're saying God is greater than whatever may come to my mind. But Hamza, so why do you pray? And I was stumped because no one had ever asked me that. So I thought about it. And I said, I pray because those are the 5 anchors, like, in my day. Those are the 5 things the 5 times a day that I'm reminded of who I am. I'm reminded of why I'm here. I'm reminded that I don't own myself. Like, I don't even own my time. But in that moment, in that prayer, spending that time to be, number one, appreciative and practice gratitude on one side. And then the other side is being certain, like, I'm certain that I'm here for a reason. I'm certain that God is going to give me exactly what I need, regardless of what I'm going through. So I think that daily practice of prayer for me has turned into gratitude and certainty. And in between is like whatever's happening, like right now, our brothers and sisters being affected by the earthquake in Turkey. Like that's real. So I think in between is asking for the prayers and asking for guidance and asking for protection, and all of our brothers and sisters that are here asking for guidance. But I would say the 5 daily prayers for me is something that helps me to strengthen my faith daily.
I'm part of the first part, but the second part of your question, there's a thing that I do there's an app called Calm, and after doing like a little stint in this facility, it really helped me to help with my spirituality, my peace, and breathing has a lot to do with that, and mindfulness, and knowing how, taking a second to see, where am I holding tension in my body? Why am I holding tension there? Being able to release things. That's been a big thing for me. And then also, like Brother Hamza said, just having a mindfulness of gratitude, right? And that's not gratitude that, hey, I ran 100 meters today and I PR'd. You might run 100 meters and get your butt kicked, you know what I mean? But like, you did your best. And be grateful that you were able to do your best. Be grateful that you were healthy, right? And be grateful that you have the opportunity to go out there and train and learn from what you just did to be able to go forward. I think that's big.
I just wanted to ask you guys, so you guys described in your stories about your own faithfulness and coming back to it through difficulty in your lives, which is common experience, for a lot of folk. At the same time, y'all made it, very privileged, and clearly you guys are guys of faith. So do you think about what you're doing here today and otherwise as like a moral obligation you have driven by your faith to talk about, where you come from and what you stand for, what you believe? And if so, how do you think about, is that something you feel, that privilege and that obligation? And if so, how does that inform what you're doing? How would you describe that? What are you trying to do now?
I think number one, as Hamza said in the beginning, you're not perfect, right? We go through our daily struggles and battles, but we are on a path to become better than we were yesterday. And I think if you have that mindset, you're setting yourself up for positivity. Can you remind me the first part of your question?
Yeah, good about.
Okay. Yeah.
In body. Only night. I love the fact that you have this body. No, I can think about our religion and spirituality. I know we have more observation. What? It seems like maybe you guys feel something of one.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So I think anytime that you have an experience and you're able to gain a negative, or even if it was a positive, negative from an experience, right? If you're not able to share that experience with somebody else, it's completely a waste. You know what I'm saying? Because that means that you're basically just living for yourself, right? Because I could be dealing with depression, right? There could be many of you living in the room with depression, but if you don't talk about it, I don't talk about it, you think you're in it by yourself. And there's power where in the Bible it says we're two come together, right? There's power. So anytime that you're able to share your experiences with other people, you're able to uplift. You know what I'm saying? Even if you're down here, like, I don't have anything left, like, man, you went through this too, and you're here now, I have a chance, right? So that's the power in that, and that's the reason why I will share any struggle that I've ever been through or any positive I've ever been through, because otherwise it's just, it's wasted.
If I may piggyback on that, have you had the experience of playing with guys who cared more about football than about their faith, who maybe started out with a faith and then just gave that because they started juicing or whatever, that making it was more important, and they lost, as those of us on the outside, like when you're not being true to yourself, when you're not preparing, when you're not doing it honestly, you're shortchanging yourself in the long run. Has there been those kind of experiences?
I personally, I won't speak on what somebody else is doing, because that's not on me to do. But yes, I'm sure there are people I know this is the right path, but if I do this path right here, this path is going to gain me millions of dollars in notoriety and fame and XYZ. At some point, this is going to end, and it's going to end usually poorly, right? So yeah, like for me, I kept my nose clean in terms of, I didn't want to let my family down. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be a disgrace, like, everything you got here because you cheated. You know what I mean? No. So no, I never was a multi-millionaire, you know what I mean? But I feel good about what I did, but yes, the answer is yes. There are people who've gone down that path for sure.
I would say I can speak for me and him, because when you feel like you're doing things the right way and is not being rewarded, that's a very difficult position to be in. Because especially in the NFL, like Matt said, we have a short window to earn a ridiculous amount, a lifetime's worth, to have a real head start. And when you feel like you're doing the right things and you're coming to work with a smile on your face, and regardless of where they put you on the depth chart, you're still bringing that energy, like, that takes a toll on you, man. It takes a real toll. And I saw it happen with him. I saw it happen with me. But thankfully, my last 2 years, I had him. Like, if I didn't have this guy, like, in 2009, I didn't want to play football again because I did that and I was by myself. But in 2010, 2011, he was here. And so I had someone to talk to. I had someone to talk about it, like, man, like, if we went over here, like you said, you brought up steroids or juicing, like we would get a contract, a big contract. Or if we just looked out for ourselves, if we just tried to go make the play, if we tried to go make a whole bunch of interceptions, like forget what the team is doing. But me personally, if I go get these interceptions, I can go make a lot of money. But it just wasn't him. It just wasn't me. Like, but that's a very difficult and a lonely place to be, because you see what could happen, because we've seen other people rewarded for that. Like, man, that guy only looks out for himself. But he's the one that you guys market. He's the one you give a C to. He's not a captain. He's not leading anyone. But you gave him a C. You're selling his jersey in the shop. And you look at it like, man, what am I doing wrong? And it's like that choice that you have to make.
Well, I would like to say that never knowing either of you before this, even by reputation, that you're both men of integrity, and I admire you both for your professional acumen as ball players and for your faith, because the combination has made you somebody that I look up to, and I don't look up to a lot of guys. So,
thank you.
Scripture or teaching from your faith tradition. Think about who you are with.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys all heard this one, but John 3:16, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I believe that just from being down, rock bottom, you know what I mean? And not having the answer, but then praying, continuing, putting it on God's will, you know what I'm saying, that it will be taken care of, that my family will be taken care of, having that belief, that's what I've always leaned on. And that's from a very young age, that always pops up in my head. And then also, for me, the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, you know what I'm saying? Gratefulness, kindness, goodness, faith, generosity, self-control. When I feel like I'm starting to lose it, you know what I mean? I say that over and over and over again, and then you're able to start giving that off again. You know what I mean? It might not be there initially, but like this is the foundation. And I don't say it just for Christianity, but I'm sure a lot of religions, you know what I'm saying? Those are the basis, being a good person, good character.
And I would say there was something that my mom taught me when I was 5 years old, and it is from the faith tradition, a hadith, a narration from the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And he said, none of you truly believes until you love for your brother that which you love for yourself. And for me, I wanted everything. Like, I wanted to be the absolute best. I wanted to be the top paid safety, and I wanted to make a lot of plays and have a great family and do great in the community. And I wanted that for my brother. Like, I literally had a brother in the NFL, so I really wanted for him what I wanted for myself. And so I really worked on that. But something that really hit me was I was in a very low place, like literally low, like on the ground, on my knees. And there was a copy of Imam al-Nawawi's 40th Hadith, a collection of narrations from the Islamic tradition. It was on my nightstand, and I hadn't picked it up. And I picked it up, but there were 42 Hadiths in there. So the 42nd Hadith, and again, I have my Imam here. So I will just kind of sum it up, but inshallah he can correct me. But it basically said that, "O you son of Adam," talking to me, talking to all of us, "were you to come to me with sins that reach the heavens like the skies, but you don't associate any partners with me, and you ask for forgiveness, I'll give it to you." I'll give it to you. And it's a longer version. Can you say that ID for me? Okay. But basically, I know, but it was basically saying, and this is God, like, I don't care what you do. Like, I don't care what you do. You're not that low. I will always forgive you. Just ask. And I thought that was so powerful. I don't care what you've done in your life. Man, I'm so this, and my dad is mad at me, or my mom is mad at me, or my wife is mad at me, or my husband or my kids are mad at me. Like, God ain't mad at you. You just got to ask for forgiveness. And that was something that I felt when I read it. I felt it. And I asked God to forgive me, and I continue to ask God for forgiveness.
Thank you both so much for sharing with us. It takes a lot of vulnerability to sit up in front of everyone and discuss your personal faith and professional careers, the ups and the downs. So join me very quickly with a round of applause for both of these. And then one more question, and then I'll turn it over. Very, very quickly. Not who are you supporting, but who do you think is going to win